If you've ever conducted Amazon keyword research using the tools such as Helium 10 or Jungle Scout, you will know that while you can get a lot of data from them, it's quite hard to process this data. All you get, for example, in Helium 10 is a long table of keywords and a table on the word frequency, but it's quite generic. And in Jungle Scout, you just get this word cloud. So what do you do with this? In this video, I will show you how you can augment and enhance the data which you obtain from Helium 10 and Jungle Scout using a combination of AI and knowledge graphs with the help of the tool that's called InfraNodus. InfraNodus can get your data from Helium 10 and Jungle Scout, visualize it as a knowledge graph where the main keywords are shown as the nodes and the co-occurrences are shown as connections. Then it applies complex graph metrics to identify the clusters of the most relevant keyword groups. So for example, here we can see that for this very search, we have clusters on relationship, we have cluster on public speaking, German language, and so on. So we really quickly understand the structure of the current demand and supply for this product. And more importantly, we can also use this structural insight to identify the gaps. And that means that these are very efficient entrance points into this market, because as soon as you offer something that can fit this gap, which is not yet fulfilled, you will probably do much better than your competitors, especially if you target the gaps between very big groups, like here, for instance, travel guide and public speaking, or here, German language and public speaking, and so on. So if you're interested to see how it works, keep watching and I will demonstrate step by step, while also demonstrating some of the features in both Helium 10 and Jungle Scout that allow you to extract very interesting insights on keywords. Also, please subscribe to this video so you can get informed when we release more tutorials, but don't click like so that your competitors don't see this approach, because if they do, they will also do much better than you on Amazon. So first of all, Helium 10 allows you to conduct keyword research for a certain topic. So here I'm going to go into the main dashboard and I will use a real product that we're currently working on that we want to sell on Amazon. It's called the Conversation Book. So I'm just going to type in Conversation Book. I'm going to choose the market, UK in this case, and I'm going to click search. And what Helium 10 does is that it extracts data that relate to high volume search terms that are relevant to my keywords, and then it shows me a summary of the keyword phrases that it extracts. While the summary is quite interesting because it has a lot of data, it's very hard to get something out of it because I just see a list of terms. I don't understand the patterns. I only have this word frequency panel here, which shows me what are the most frequent words. Okay, I understand some of it, like books, that's obvious, German. Okay, so that's interesting, something on German language. Travel, conversation, but that's it. I don't understand the combinations of those words. I don't understand which topics exist out there and so on. So that's quite difficult. The same thing if I conduct a search using the extension of Jungle Scout on Amazon, I will see a list of products, which is quite interesting because it gives me an idea of what the main products are there, right? So I can load a little bit more. But again, I don't understand the pattern of those products. I don't really get like what is the most typical product offered on this topic. So it gives me a very vague idea of the current supply. I can, of course, click on Keyword Cloud and get some ideas here. So I can see that there's something on conversation and communication, but then it's very hard to get a little bit more in detail here. So that's quite difficult. I think it's great data, it's very useful data to have, but the way it's presented and what we can do with it is not really usable to me. So how can we augment and enhance this data using AI? In both cases, if you have a paid account, you can actually export this data from Helium 10 or Jungle Scout. If you don't have a paid account, you can also just copy and paste everything here on that page. So for example, I will just select this and then I click copy, and I can copy this data. I'll show you later how you can also process this. But first, I'll do it the easy way. I'll go to Helium 10 and I will go back to the search and click export data as a CSV file. So what happens now is that Helium 10 will create a CSV file, a spreadsheet, with all this information of the keywords that are related to the term Conversation Book. Then I'm going to go to InfraNodus and I'm going to go to the apps page. I'm going to click Study a Market because that's what I want to do. Here it offers me a lot of different options of importing data, but I'm going to use the data that I already have. So I'm going to click Import Files, CSV Spreadsheet, because that's the file I have. I'm going to select this file that I just extracted from Helium 10. And here on this page, I'm going to say I want to analyze the column with keyword phrases. So then I click Next, give it a new name, and click Visualize. What happens next is that InfraNodus will represent every word in these keyword phrases as a node, and every co-occurrence of words is the connection. Based on this logic, it builds a knowledge graph or a network graph of terms, where the bigger they are, the more influence and relevance they have in the current discourse. And if they have the same color, it means they belong to the same cluster of words. The interesting thing here is that representing it as a graph allows me to interactively clean this data. So instead of having to read through these long lists and trying to get what's not relevant out, I will actually look at the graph, and my first impression will be, of course, I will have the word book a lot, but it's not interesting to me because obviously when people search for conversation books, they search for books. So I'm going to select this word, hide it from the graph. InfraNodus recalculates the structure of this discourse and shows me what are the main clusters. They're indicated with the different colors here. The bigger words are the more influential words, and then it uses the built-in AI, which is querying GPT-4 AI model and generates the names for this topic. So it gives me a very clear, quick idea of the main topics that exist on the subject on Amazon, right? So here I understand that if people search for conversation books, they will encounter something on relationship and love, on public speaking, learning a German language, and also a weird cluster on travel guides. So that gives me a very nice and clear overview of the current market on this subject. Now, the interesting part here is that when I have this insight and when I see how these topics are related, I can see that, okay, there's a lot on relationship and love, for example, and public speaking. So these are the two topics which are targeted by those books, which means that if my book is targeting these topics, probably it's going to fit into the market, but it's also going to compete with the other products, right? So then I would have to see what else my book can offer or how it can connect those topics in an interesting way. This is where the blind spots feature comes in very handy, because here it identifies the gaps in the discourse. So for example, here it shows me, okay, there are books on public speaking and on German language, but they're not very well connected. So if you think of a connection between them, you will probably generate some interesting product ideas or even product descriptions that would cater to the people who want to sort of combine these two topics together, right? So if I make a book, or if I talk about my book as something that can be useful both for training your public speaking skills, but also for learning a language, that could be an interesting insight for me. So here, if I have an insight like this, I can actually open the project notes here in InfraNodus and write down, add into the description how the book can be useful both for training your speaking skills and language. The fact that those two clusters exist means that there are probably some books on learning the language and some books on public speaking, but not the books that talk about those two topics at the same time. So again, if I manage to market my product in a way that will combine those two topics together, I'll probably have advantage. Also in terms of the search algorithms, because they will see I'm connecting the topics which are not connected yet. And if you're familiar with the concept of informational gain, which Google patented as a search algorithm, you will know what I'm talking about. As soon as you add something to the current discourse in a way that no one else does, you will go higher in search results. So this would be one approach, to just identify those gaps, and you can reload them in InfraNodus and think of some product ideas that would combine these two clusters. And if you cannot think of an idea, you can also use the button here, which will generate a question using the built-in AI and come up with some product idea or a general research idea that can make you think of an interesting product or of an interesting way of talking about your product that you can then use when you market it. And if you like it, you can save it to your project ideas here and later extract some of the insights from this notepad to then generate interesting product descriptions for what you're working on. Now compare it to what you get in Helium 10 or in Jungle Scout, and you will see that you nearly don't get any sort of information like this. You know, it just shows you what's being searched for the most, which can be useful. So that information you should also take into account. For instance, if you have some kind of filter option on the search volume, you will probably want to address the words which are searched for a lot, but then of course you will have higher competition. So what you can do is to take these insights that you obtain from InfraNodus, from the graph, and then try to compare it with the actual number of searches and see how you could enter into this market without having to compete with the most popular products or the most popular search queries. In Jungle Scout, what's useful is that it shows you a list of the products, and you can actually click load more, and here I'm on the free account, so you don't have to pay for that. And while they don't let you export this stuff, because I'm probably not paying for the subscription here, what you can actually do is just to select all this data. So here, let me just go from the top, and I'm gonna manually select everything. And I will import it into InfraNodus because these are product descriptions, and I'm interested to see what are the patterns in this product description. So that could be another approach. If you have a tool, let's say you're paying for it, so you have the full data and you can export this data, you could actually use the plain text import in InfraNodus. So you would go to study market, import plain text, analyze the text, and then you would just paste everything that you exported so far on the topic, right? So here it has all the information on the book titles and also the authors. And then you click next, and it visualizes it exactly the same way, allowing you to find patterns in this data. So that's how you can also do it with the simple copy and paste approach. And again, I would remove the most typical terms, such as the conversation book. And then here I can see, okay, author we also don't need, because this is the title of the author name. And here it gives me a clear idea of the main books which are found on Amazon for this subject, right? So here I see once again that there is a lot on language learning, on having difficult conversations, on personal success, and on effective communication. It's quite similar to the keyword research that we did before using Helium 10 data, so it's kind of similar results. But if Helium 10, I think it provides a combination of what else people search for to the products. Here is just the products that exist, and we see that they're quite similar. But the structural insight allows us to get some really interesting information here, because, for example, I can see that the books on difficult conversations, they're closer to language learning. But this language learning cluster is a bit separate, all right? But what's interesting here is that effective communication is on a completely different end from language learning, which means that when the books are offered on Amazon on effective communication, it's very unlikely that they would be connected to the books on language learning. So we can also use this graph representation to see which topics are not connected. And if we offer a product that would connect those two topics together, so for example, we say that our book can be used both for effective communication and for language learning, that will be a really good offering, because it's going to make a connection between those clusters which are not yet connected. Again, a kind of insight that Helium 10 or Jungle Scout could provide, but they're not doing that. Here in InfraNodus, you can achieve these results. You can get this information out. And here you see one on effective communication, language learning. So your product idea or an idea for a product description might be to emphasize those aspects a little bit better, that your book can be used both for language learning and for training effective communication skills. So it kind of confirms our previous insight using this additional data. So that would be another way to enhance your results. And once again, if you cannot come up with ideas on how you can actually generate this sort of connection between these two topics, you can actually select them both at the same time. If you click Shift, then they will be selected. And then if you go to AI Insights, let me just select it again, you will have those two topics selected. Then you click here, derive from this context, and then you can actually generate an idea that would connect those two topics together. Okay, so you're using the structure, you're identifying the parts of the structure that you find relevant, and then you're sending it to AI to generate some kind of business idea. And here, for instance, it says, create a multilingual storytelling platform that uses AI to enhance language learning through engaging dialogues, stories, and art. That's amazing, because it just gives me an idea that instead of just publishing my book, I can also make a kind of like a website or an app that would be catering to those two needs, to learn a language and to enhance your communication skills. So that's great. I'm actually gonna save this idea. Maybe you will see another video of mine where I'm talking about developing this business idea, for instance. So as you can see, not only useful to generate product descriptions, but also product ideas here. And this is the approach you would use. Identify the gaps, think of a connection, use the built-in AI to generate those connections. So this is how it would work. One last thing I want to show is that you can actually use the tools which are built into InfraNodus to study the market a little bit better. So if you look into Helium 10 or into Jungle Scout, mostly they just tell you what exists out there on the market. They give you really good information about the search volume, how well a certain product is being sold, but there's not so much information on what people actually search for, right? So this is kind of like an attempt in this direction, but not really, because it has a lot of irrelevant data. So inside InfraNodus, you have an option where you can actually study what people search for when they search for a certain topic. So here, if we go to analyze the demand, conversation book, popular search queries. And here is just gonna try to import from Google the search queries that are related to conversation books. So it gives us a better idea of what people search for when they search for conversation books. And again, we see that English, so learning a language, is a very important topic. That already confirms our previous hypothesis that something important. PDF always comes up, but for us it can be a good idea that if we create an ebook version of this book, it might also sell well because people search for it. And here, look at this cluster. There's a cluster on social skills and making friends, right? So people actually, they're not only interested in developing their conversation skills, but they want to see how they can make friends using the book. So that's great. This is another insight I can write down. Conversation as a way of making friends. And if I combine the insights which I obtained so far, I'm going to say, okay, this book, it should cater to the people who want to learn a language, who want to improve their conversation skills, and who also want to befriend other people. If I add these three topics into the description of my book, I will make sure that it connects all the different clusters of topics or keywords that exist out there in the market, but it will also cater to the search patterns that people have, okay? So this gives me a really valuable insight on how I can connect the existing ideas specifically in order to market my product better. And by the way, here, for example, now the search was very narrow, it was on the conversation books, but for example, let's see what people search for when they search for conversations in general, right? So I can add it here, add more data into the graph, and then it shows me, okay, conversation books. I'm gonna select these, hide, so I can see what's hiding behind. English PDF again, because this we already know. And then, okay, meeting strangers, dealing with devils, self-improvement, app review. So apps is an important one, online dating, and late night talks and conversations. It's great. So people want to find topics for the conversations. You see the relationship aspect is coming up here a lot. And what does it tell us? That when people search for something, they look for the conversation books or games or apps that would help them come up with new topics, meet new people, befriend people, and so on. While when they actually find something, right? So here we will look into the patterns of what they find. You will see that here it's more about communication skills and language learning. We have a little bit on the conversations between people, but mostly how to have difficult conversations. So what we see is also a gap between the supply and demand, because we see that people want to find something on making friends and coming up with interesting topics for conversation, but what they're offered are the books on effective communication and personal success. So that might be not really catering to their results. There is a way of highlighting this in InfraNodus if you use this feature, compare graphs, which by the way, if you don't see, you can activate it by clicking the advanced mode here. If you compare these graphs, you say, okay, compare the supply to demand. So in this case, I'm going to see what exists out there. So here you have the filter in keyword. So in the keywords that people search for, when they search for this book, but what they don't find. So here we remove English PDF conversations, topics, life, free, and so on. So you see late night topics in everyday life and kind of like how you can talk to friends. Also, this they don't find so much. We're in the comparison view. What is in the keyword that people search for, but what they don't find, right? So here we see that they don't find so much stuff on how to make friends and how to come up with new conversation topics. So we know that if on top of the insights we already have, we generate a product description that would cater to those demands, not only we would fit into what people want, but also probably the search algorithms would identify that we are actually offering a product which is talking about the stuff that people need and that they don't find. So that will also give us a competitive advantage here. So that would be one last approach that you can use. So I hope you find this information useful, and if you have any questions, please let me know. Also, please subscribe to this video, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and let me know your feedback on how you use this approach for your own products. Thank you.